Good evening and welcome all to the episode 12 of Leadership Lens Beyond Titles. Today, the topic is performance beyond ratings. And as you all are aware, Leadership Lens Beyond Title is a thought provoking HR leadership podcast series that is created to explore this very shift. This series primarily aims to examine leadership through a wider lens that one goes beyond formal authority and focuses on mindset, people strategy, organizational culture, and future ready leadership practices. And today with us, we have Ms. Shanti Abhayam, who's the head of HR for Global Healthcare Billing Partners. Good evening, Shanti. We are glad to host you in our session today.
Good evening, Arun. Thanks for the warm welcome and introduction.
Thank you. So, before we get into the topic, we have a small intro video about Shanti. We will play that and then we would get on to the topic. Okay, and that was the introduction video for Shanti Abhiyam. So, Shanti, welcome once again. And I'm sure with the experience that you carry and with the industries that you work, you would have seen a lot of shifts that every organization has underwent. Where most of the organizations still traditionally follow a rating methodology, and that often simplifies human performances into numbers. In your view, what does performance beyond rating truly mean in today's workplace?
Um, I think this topic is very interesting because performance is something that every organization truly values in terms of assessing, measuring, promoting, because majorly the organization thrive on its human capital. Because if organizations have to succeed, people form the pivotal part of it. So, in my opinion, performance system has really evolved over the period of time. What started like a very simple performance measure, like we had a single metric and a very standard way of reviewing and rewarding performance, and then it transformed into setting up of the KPIs, the measures, and then creating a performance rating system, and then slowly we had the bell curve introduced into it. So this kind of evolved in terms of building that system more robust, because that's where the organization scalability and the performance system were thought of going hand in hand, where the development happened for both the organization and the people. And now there is also a juncture that came that should we have the bell curve? Should the bell curve be dropped? That was yet another interesting conversations where certain organizations said we will drop the bell curve, we will make a continuous performance evaluation methods monthly, quarterly, and there are still organizations following the bell curve method as well. So it's a mixture of all, but I truly feel that it is one of the most challenging because you are having the human element, you are having a number, and you really have to understand both, because the person is going to feel that they have always contributed, whereas somebody is going to say that what you have contributed falls short of what we expected. So this is a very challenging dimension that we always encounter.
Certainly, I agree with you because the organization primarily tries to create a win-win situation, and if that has to happen, the organization should also understand how employees perform, how employees deliver, and how employees take certain aspects in terms of solving certain problems. Definitely, there is a great impact on the business once we have evident data in terms of who has higher ability and who's showcasing that ability and who's implementing that ability, right? So can organizations genuinely drive business performances without relying heavily on the annual ratings? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I cannot say that they can thrive without relying on the annual ratings because the organization's major dimension, as I mentioned, is people. And if people are not performing and we don't have clear measures to evaluate that performance, then the directions of the organization's goals and the delivery towards that goals will not be very tangible. So we really have to measure, but what to measure, how to measure, setting up a system around it, rewarding performance becomes a whole lot of an ecosystem because the organization will have a goal and it all starts from the goal cascading, how the alignments happen, how do we all align towards that goal and start delivering so that we become one organization which is working towards one goal. That oneness is where we always aim at building, because that's where you actually disseminate into the lowest level of your employee who is also understanding how they are going to deliver towards the success of the organization.
This resonates strongly for me. I would also say personally, because with one of the organizations that I'm part of, I was there for about 3 years. They were very particular that the mission statement has to be changed because the drive and the focus for that year was totally different than what we did the previous year. So we went back, the entire management team. We thought that we need to first rework on our mission statement and then derive objectives for the upcoming year and then cascade it to our teams so that the entire organization for sure knows what is the primary vision or the mission that they're going to be part of and what is the overall organization's objectives. Definitely it resonates strongly when you mentioned about the organization goals and how can an organization achieve goals without a performance rating, right? So there are organizations that work on a continuous performance culture or a management, right? So I know it's a very difficult task because when it is performance, it is more on feedback, it is more on tracking an employee's abilities to see how he can move across the ladder, above the ladder, and at the same time, what should we do next if the person is unable to meet the expectations. So most of the organizations are now working on a continuous performance management process. How can HR leaders like us build a culture where performance becomes a continuous dialogue rather than just an annual event that where we meet every year and then we see who's scored what and then we do the appraisal rating and then give an employee a salary increase?
Um, I think when we look at all these, the strategical functions of HR, always it becomes like it is HR's ownership of these function, but it is never that way because HR develops the beautiful systems that are run through the organization, but the true owners are the people leaders who are beyond the HR department, who are actually having the people in their team. So it's the operational leaders in every department who are the extended HR team. Because when we develop a system, we develop it for the organization and we drive it from a framework standpoint. But the true owners are each leader who is having their team members looking up to them because they are the ones who are continuously interacting with them. They are the ones who are giving them the task, work allocation, getting the work, who monitor them, who are closely working with them in day in, day out. HR can come in, support them, and assist them or give them some guidance. So it is that manager who owns the team members because they just don't own the outcome of the employee. They're responsible for their career building also. I think that is very important when we are talking about continuous performance culture. Because when you are taking the word continuous, it has to be once monitored continuous, and anything that comes as even appreciation or a correction has to be also continuous. And who else than the reporting manager can give that continuous feedback? Definitely not HR. So it has to be through them and they own it.
Certainly. See, even though HR leaders initiate a particular activity, the ownership still lies with the respective manager, not just to implement it, but also to ensure that it is not just followed on 100% paper or a guideline level, but to a much deeper level where the employees really feel that they've been part of a bigger objective rather than just meeting the team targets. In healthcare BPOs that I've also been part of or that you're currently part of, I know it is a high pressure environment because even if one employee makes a mistake in one of the charts, the client gets really unhappy about it, and the overall quality score dips, and there is a huge challenge in terms of the overall payment and other commercial factor. So, and then this again, there are a lot of tech-enabled service providers who also support us on certain areas of the healthcare BPO. But in this fast-paced healthcare BPOs that are emerging in the market, where primarily metrics definitely dominate the overall operations of the business. And where is it we see that there is a balance that is measuring productivity with employees against their development and well-being?
As you rightly said, Arun, healthcare is a very tightly packed, metric-driven, industry, because the impact doesn't lie within the organization, because the industry where it belongs to is also going to be impacted. Because the quality scores are very, very sensitive, and it's a very time-driven, output based industry, because you have a very specifically defined tag for everything. So this really makes it, I would say, very exhaustive for the employee, because they really run through these stats rigorously. So that's very exhaustive. But I think the development aspect comes in as, little from the previous question of the continuous feedback and continuous performance feedback. So this is where the continuous feedback really helps the development aspect, because when your metrics are very tight, even one metrics going wrong, you cannot think that the performance entirely can be taken away from the employee. You really have to understand, because sometimes the employee can be exhausted, because it's very draining, and not all the time they come 100% to the office. There can be a background to it, and it's not that every day the 100% is expected. When the metrics, they always give it, but sometimes when something goes wrong, you should be able to understand and consider the aspect of the employee. And there is a development where the employee also wants to build a career. So this is where we balance in terms of the regular routine delivery and also the long term career aspirations of the employees. And we coach the managers, because they are the coaches for their team. So it's kind of a continuation of the previous question, I would say, like what you are trying to look at as a feedback, because the managers really have to support that for the HR, because it's more of the exhaustions that come in, errors creep into the system, there is a performance dip that happens. So it's a very cyclic in nature. And we really strongly partner with the managers to make them understand that, hey, it's your employee. While you have the targets that needs to be given, the SLAs to be met for your clients, but don't take away that aspect that your employees needs to be given that human touch. So that really helps us to make sure that it is also for the client, for the organization, and for the employee.
Definitely. In the healthcare BPO that I was part of, we kept revamping not just the PMS, but also certain aspects that drove the business, the teams, and the employees. One such activity was the team leaders should ensure that at least 15% of their employees are groomed that year so that they could take up the opportunities that are coming their way in the next 6 months or 1 year's time. This number slowly increased, and over a period of time, as an organization, we said that if there is an internal opportunity, if there's an opportunity that comes up, we would look for individuals internally, and if they aren't available, only then we would go to the external market. And sometimes when the numbers are little high, we said we will have a 70-30 ratio where 70% of these positions would be filled internally by all by the employees who are in that process, and 30% of those requirements would be hired from outside. So we wanted to also have that mix. And doing this, what really happened was employees did understand that it is not just their performance that played a vital role, their behavior, the flexibility that they showed, either working on a weekend or extending their shift for a particular day, supporting a team when the team required their presence to be there, and mostly how well they were able to spend a day by managing 80% of their tasks and adding another 20% from their managers' tasks. Right, there were a lot of other aspects also that made people to showcase their developmental interest, and we made it very transparent, and people really appreciated that initiative, and we were also able to retain many good performers through this process. We always say that leaders are accountable, and most of the time the first level leaders are the guys who generally create a concern, and then it either goes to the manager or to HR, where we come and help them resolve that. For leaders like us, what if the ratings that disappear tomorrow? What would be the new accountability that every manager should be able to ensure, which is transparent, fair, and at the same time, growth and performance excellence is definitely not compromised.
Um, I think if the rating disappears, then the actual load comes to the shoulders of the managers, because you really can't bank just on the number, because at the end of the day your team is going to question you in terms of what is happening, why this person has got some increment better than them. So you can't derive it just by metrics. So you need your answers to be very clear. If you have really worked closely with the team, then you will be able to better answer such questions, because that is where the manager has really been a team player, giving the team a visibility of what's happening, and was also giving them a continuous feedback, and holding on to his accountability towards the team, which actually builds the transparency. So it's again, one leading to the other. So if that is just the number, it's quite easy for the manager to also piggyback behind that. I think once that number goes off, they will truly act as what the HRs propagate. Like, you have to do this, you have to do that. That will be demonstrated, and we can really see that.
Certainly. So you're saying that people's accountability will increase, and they will start showcasing all aspects of their competencies on a much higher level. Certainly, I would agree to that. And just to narrate an example, most of the schools have removed the ranking system. So either they say whether the student has passed or failed, and they've removed their entire ranking system. So this not only made the children get that more confidence, because when they were ranked, they felt they did the best, but still they didn't get either the second or the third rank. Apparently they were pushed to fifth or sixth. But what happened after the ranking systems were removed is that they literally had the opportunity to showcase whether they get an A or an A plus or a B or an O, right? So that individual satisfaction is always there, and when they lag in a particular area, that's when our performance improvement processes and refresher trainings and process trainings come into picture, where those departments handhold, and then they ensure that the person is fully equipped with whatever the updates are, whatever they miss to follow it in their routine work, and then they enable them either through a process training or a refresher training or through a classroom training, right? So
Just to draw parallels, when you picked up the school example, when you take the ranking system out and you are not going to give a number, I think as we are telling, the managers are more accountable. only then the teacher sits down to understand where the children has actually done something. So that's become more a qualitative data than the quantitative data, because that expression adds a lot more credibility of their spending the time with the child in giving that narrative to the parent that your child was good in this, they were able to do this. So that expression brings a lot more dimension in that conversation. So just fitting into a number will narrow down that opportunity. I mean, that's what I really feel. Because if you give a number, while we always look out for a quantitative data and a qualitative data, it is always easy for driving a metrics because it's very easy to put into an Excel, put into a pivot table. But when you always draw an insight, you write, right? You always derive that insight into an expression that's always expressed in qualitative way. So you should look at the number for you to just assess from an overall perspective. But when you look at an individual, what that individual is really capable, what that person is good at, or what that person is distinctively good at, that differentiation will only come when you're able to spend the time, have a conversation, highlight that kind of a feedback. Because when you take that number away, I think the manager will get that opportunity to have a conversation. Because what I have witnessed over the past years, it is very easy for the manager to say that you are I've given you a 3 rating, or I've given you a 4 rating, and this year's performance appraisal is done. That's quite easy. But if you ask them to sit down with their employee and ask them to give a constructive feedback. So when you say constructive feedback, not necessarily you say the positive, right? You also put your feedback for the improvement areas, so that it's a development aspect. That is the most difficult thing. Because to have that conversation, I'm sure most of the managers find it very difficult. Because what if I tell this person is not good at it and tomorrow he doesn't turn back to work? So they always hold that thought in their mind. They restrict that conversation because they really want to sound good. And when you look at the good cop, bad cop thing, HR becomes the bad cop all the time. HR gave me this percentage, I have to force fit it. This is what it is. So we always become the scapegoat. It's easy for the manager to maintain that good image, and HR, because they're all used to having a bad image, what if one more get add to it? So it doesn't make a difference, right? So that kind of a dimension will definitely change when you take away the number. That's what I honestly feel.
Yes, I would definitely agree to your points because it is not just the numbers, it is way beyond that. Most of the time, when it comes to performance, it is always the appraiser gets to criticize the performer, and then generally I tell them criticize their performance, right? So most of the time we end up criticizing the performer, and that is when the challenge starts, and then people start to leave. People don't listen. They take it very personally, even though the manager is giving a constructive feedback in terms of telling them, hey, I know you can do better, but still these are the areas that you missed, right? There are ways to put that across to an employee. And primarily, when we're talking about performance, when we talk about pivoting, it's more about the growth, right? So why does someone perform? Why does an organization need to perform? It is because the organization wants to grow, the employee wants to grow. So, and now if we have to talk about performance discussions, moving from how did you perform, and then you have to say, were you able to grow, were you able to learn, and what was your contribution? Would that be a practical shift in today's synergy?
Um, I think that statement of moving from how did you perform to how did you grow, contribute, and evolve has got a multi-dimension, because there is a different context to each of these parameters, because that's a very holistic conversation that we can definitely have. Because giving the fact that with the new generation of workforce entering, who very strongly believe, like, what is the purpose, what do I get to see, how do I contribute, because they are not looking at some number, they're looking at a lot more bigger dimension than just a number. So you can't have that conversation what you had in the past with this generation, who might not be able to well resonate with you just giving them a number and stopping that. They really want to hear more, because they really want to understand what is that which is lying behind the screen. So you will have to paint that picture for them. So you will have to tell them how they can contribute. What is the bigger picture of the organization where they fit in? Unless and until you are able to really connect them to that, the goal, the vision, the mission. Because I think we've always been publishing the vision, the mission, the goal of the organization. But if you suddenly ask somebody, they may not be able to resonate with the statement, right? How many of us would go back and refer to the notes if you ask, tell me what's the mission statement of your organization? But it's not about those text or the words there. It's about that core concept. What do you really want to do? So if you understand that, you'll be able to internalize, hold that in your mind every time you're doing something for the organization. So you need to create that a very louder noise, louder version for this generation to understand. So when you move that conversation, that question, from what did you do to how did you get evolved when you did that? So that becomes a lot more contextual. And most often, employees really want to keep that learning opportunity very high. So if you are able to give them that opportunity and understand what did they learn, because sometimes we give the opportunity, but we don't go back and just create that small notes of, okay, I gave you this assignment. What did you learn? How was that learning experience? We can see the outcome, but the journey is more important. So how did you go about getting that outcome? What were your challenges? Because that's the true experience that the employee gets. What is that they have really done in overcoming the challenge? Did they do it with minimal support? Did they do it individually? How did they collaborate? Because these are all different dimensions that we measure in an organization, like teamwork, collaboration. So this is embedded in that journey. So when we are able to really get to that conversation, understand that we know how important this employee is becoming in his growth to the organization growth. So that's more important.
Well, perfect. Because I mean, the couple of CEOs that I've worked, they were very particular in terms of getting the Great Places to Work certification. That's when I kept telling them we don't really have to prove to the world that we are a great place to work. And for me, it doesn't stop there because for me, as an employee as well, I would be happy if I get a certification that says great place to grow, right? So when you say or use the word work, it simply says you are there for a temporary reason, right? When you say you are there to grow, it's a great place to grow. It really binds way beyond your work. It also binds with your aspirations that the company is able to provide and little beyond that as well. So when talking about growth, what did you do? How did you get? Those are the real conversations that also influences an employee, the team, and the organization to keep growing, right?
Just to
And
add, when we are talking this, I always tell my recruitment team, don't sell the job to the candidate. Tell them how they can build a career. Because if you are able to give them that kind of a visibility, that's when you have actually embedded them into your organization through that conversation. Because job is very transactional. You just tell them there's another person giving another 500 rupees, there's another organization giving another 1,000 rupees. So they are going to look at it only at a CTC level, because for them that's very important. But are you able to talk to them at that level where that longevity is built through building a career? That is more important. So it starts right from there, because it is not just after the employee joins, after the candidate converts into an employee. It starts when the person is a candidate and you show them that door and you open the door for them, and they are there with you for a longer time. So every person in HR is actually helping the employee, the candidate rather, to build that kind of a visibility. And we are actually those messiahs, I would say. Through us, the candidate, the employee sees that. So it's how we are going to give them that visibility.
certainly, and I actually loved the way you explained in terms of the experience begins right from how the talent acquisition team member explains or expresses the job role and how do they take the candidate through the entire interview process and make them to join. And I'm sure then the follow through point is going to resonate these points as well. And what are your thoughts in terms of connecting the employee experiences in terms of their engagement levels with their performance outcomes, that becomes a formal rating mechanism.
I think there are few words that we keep hearing a lot more. So one such is also this employee experience. This journey actually, was only with the customer centric areas where you talk about a customer experience. But for an organization, everybody is a customer, especially for HR, because you have multiple stakeholders and everybody is a customer for you. So for an HR, I feel building that experience for that employee is very important, because every touch point that you have, and that is the opportunity, because in marketing they will say customer delight, that customer delight point, the wow moment, because those are the times you can really create the magic. And if you're able to create a positive experience, the it adds up to your credit, because it is just one small act by the HR. It gives that experience to the employee where they really feel either valued or heard, or at least felt better. That's where the experience portion comes in. And when you are able to do that experience, and the employee feels valued, what more do you want? Because they really feel that they are in a good organization, and automatically that will reflect into their performance. Because nowadays, we started with the employee engagement, but we talk about ENPS, right? That one measure, one metric will say your entire HR effort, because that gives you how you have built that kind of an experience for your employee in all your touch points. So that measure will show you how you have built that credibility, where the employee sees themselves as part of this organization, and they are actually contributing to the organization through their day in day out work. Because we do a lot of things, but probably we might not have fixed the right context to it. I would say the HRs normally are the unsung heroes, because we are mostly on the behind screen areas. But what we do actually bring a lot more value to the business in different ways. So it has been only through those metrics that we have been voicing. So we are so hung up with that number. So we always focus on the number. Now that we wanted that number, the movement has now become that we want this number, we forgot why we want this number. So we have to, probably go back, refresh ourselves, and see why we wanted the number in first place, because that's the outcome. What you do is going to get that outcome. So building that experience is what was the need. What the number reflected was what you did to get that.
Certainly. And in one of the organizations, when I joined, the CEO told me, Arun, we need to do a survey. Without a surprise, he said an employee satisfaction survey, because HR and the ESS go hand in hand, and it's one of the favorite things that we like to do on an annual basis. Apparently, I was not for the ESS because I tried understanding the business model. I tried understanding the current challenges and other aspects. There was absolutely no attrition in that organization, and people felt really happy working with the team, working with the manager, working for the business. And what I actually did was I tried to relate their performance metrics with the employee value proposition, with the employee net promoter score. And that's when we were able to relate and identify gaps that were there. And to the CEO's surprise, he said, it cannot be. And I told him, no, this is the data, and data cannot be wrong. And this is what it reflects. Then again, we went back, we sat together, we analyzed the data, and whatever data we projected was 100% right. That's when they realized we were just trying to do a survey, we were just trying to see what was the score, and then that score was sent to the US team, and the entire organization celebrated. But the gaps were whether people were really valued, whether people were having a connection, what was the team leader's ability, how did the team leader handle certain situations, did the employee feel pride, did they carry that integrity, trust, and ownership in the organization? Those were all questioned, right? So it is always a particular factor that is tied to the HR, and the organizations feel happy when those numbers are shared, because those numbers are obviously going to be a good one, because we've been driving those initiatives for a very long time, right? Talking
Because
about
I think for organizations, when HR talks the truth through numbers, it's very difficult to digest. But when HR has to be questioned, all the numbers turn against HR. So that's always a battle all of our HR fraternity will be going through. But if we are standing ground and very clear about what the metrics are, uh, I think I'm sure all of us have our own portion of success stories where we have turned the tables and made them listen to us, and our initiatives have really sailed well. Because I remember when we started with our the skip meets in one of the organization, the resistance was everything is going good, why would we do it? Because things are going good, but that going good is because there's no noise. Sometimes no noise means it's good. It doesn't mean good in HR terms, because no noise can also be suppression. And that's
Absolutely.
where we step in, we understand, and we become the voice for those who are not voicing out. And only when slowly we started giving the output of these skip meets and talking with the managers, they were really surprised to see the kind of responses that we got when we showed them that data and artifacts. They were really surprised, because that is what not the picture they had. That's what we told. It's not what you see of the person, it is what the team sees of the person. Because the same individual can be different to two sides, because they know where to show power and where to be submissive. So HR's job is to hold the mirror and show the facts and tell them this is what it is. So that's where, for us, it's very important to rely on building that kind of connectedness and get our numbers straight.
Definitely. In fact, in my start of my career, the head of HR wouldn't believe, or the CEO along with them wouldn't believe whatever number we showcase. The next thing would be to cross check it with the operations department. So I really had to build the trust, saying you do please go ahead and do a double check, but don't say that you won't believe HR's number. Because initially when there was another person, most of the numbers that came to the desk was either partial or incorrect or not aligned with whatever their requirements were. So I usually dig deep to understand what could be the reason for getting a positive response or a negative response for that matter. And I go with that data and I speak to them to not just express why it is a positive or negative, but also give them a solution saying what could be done to either maintain it at a positive level or to improve it from a negative to a positive level. So for me, it took a lot of time because they felt that HRs are never good in numbers because we are not number people. We are mostly we work with employees in terms of responding to their queries, managing their challenges, so on and so forth. And now, the next interesting point is that we spoke about employee experience and engagement. Now it is on how is it relating to the rewards and recognitions program? What do you see the organizations are trying to redesign the compensation, the recognition pattern, and also the incentives in a world that is moving beyond the forced ratings and ranking structure?
Um, I think when we started our performance appraisal process or the system, and when we designed it, it was very unidimensional. Like there's an output. The output was quantified. We rewarded the person producing more output. So right from there, we've been making it unidimensional, and that's when we started evolving to add more layers to it. And right now, I think we are very appreciative of the fact that it is not unidimensional, because somebody performing is not an individual. There is always, it's a context. How much of the softer side also plays a very great significance in terms of the person achieving. Because when you start as an individual contributor, you are someday or the other going to take up a leadership role. So if we are going to measure only a very unidimensional aspect, we are going to lose the major portion of, are we identifying the potential? Are we identifying the leadership ability? Are we building a leadership pipeline? So what we are measuring is what we can correct. That's something which we know, the famous saying, right? So what we are measuring is what we are rewarding. So if you are just measuring only the output, we are not rewarding the other softer aspects. So now the organization also are recognizing that being a team player, if you are saying that, builds in that kind of spirit where the leader is part of the team and is influencing and is also inspiring the team. That team brings a lot of value add to the table. That team is more productive. So we recognize, that leader who is able to influence the people manager award. So your rewards and recognition also changes in celebrating those aspects which you really want other people to follow. So we also redefining our rewards and recognition system. It's not just that we are very focused only on the output. I think all the HRs now, if we look at aspects that are going to build great teams, greater leaders, how we are focusing in terms of innovation. So all that contribute in terms of giving us a higher visibility of that employee, who probably is not the most loudest employee, but is the most contributing employee in also being a potential leader. So you can able to harness that by creating that system where your employee who is actually the most powerful or the influence or the leader doesn't get siloed.
Right, so you're talking a lot of numbers and data and analytics, right? So I'm sure HR analytics is providing a stronger and more objective alternate to the subjective ratings that most of the organizations have been following. What data signals should leaders pay attention to?
I think we've always been very good in terms of just opening up an Excel and seeing all the numbers. But we really have to correlate the number, because you can't see one number and just be very tied to that number in silos again. As I said, there is a context to it. As you also said, right, when you had less attrition in one of the organization, people were really happy. But you put all things together, it gave a very different dimension. So a leader, in terms of looking at even in their own teams, they have to look at what an output is and who's able to be consistent in that output, and who is going to be their most dependable person. Because when they're, for example, picking up somebody from the team in developing the future leader, they can't be very output oriented, right? Because he can be just a taskmaster. He need not be the best leader, because not necessarily the best performer becomes the best leader. So you need to identify that important aspect that brings in that leadership. So when they're looking at a data point, they have to look at these contexts in terms of seeing at least 3 to 4 data points that will give them that view. That's why we always give a two-dimensional data in X and Y, right? No data in just one axis is going to give you a good interpretation. So always you take something in X, you put it in Y to give you a context. So that context, I would call it a very loud aspect. You need to understand your data in the right context. Otherwise, the whole of your insight is going to be, not the one that you really want to see.
Certainly. And again, coming back to performance, most of the time the employees feel that the ratings are criticized with a word called bias. Yeah, right. So, according to you, do you strongly believe that removing ratings would reduce or avoid bias, or it just simply shifts to somewhere else?
I have always believed that, when you do your performance review system, it is not a system that is doing by itself, right? You are having a system, but it is still done by a human. And if a human is going to do anything, these are very natural to come in, unless and until you're very conscious. You should not be looking at this. You have to look at the 1 year performance, because there is a recency bias, there is a stereotyping. So you have a lot of laundry list of biases that you have. So you have to be very, very, very conscious. So it is also that leader's responsibility that when I'm sitting and doing the review of my team member, I have to be very objective. So, removing the number would just not shift it, but it is again going to have a human element. So, these biases, whether you have a number or not, will be there because there is a human in it. It is only dependent on that human who is going to do in that system and their consciousness, which will help in eliminating the biases. Because if you have to be fair, you have to be objective. you have to keep your data and you have to have your conversation, your notes. So you have to do your homework very well, because you just can't go with your, if you're doing an annual appraisal, the 11th month or the 12th month cannot determine whether you had that person as a good employee or a bad employee. So that's going to be very detrimental for that employee. So you need to know what that employee has performed over the 12 months. And you need to also factor, if he has not performed in that 1 month, what is the reason? How can you be supportive? You cannot eliminate the 10 months of performance because the last 2 months was not good. So that's again going to be the reporting manager or the person who's appraising their responsibility.
Certainly, nobody likes to get a surprise and a shocker at the end of 12 months saying that, hey, you didn't really perform well, right? Because it is not just going to impact the morale, but also on a lot of other factors that is going to impact the entire team. It could impact the entire team as well. And
Because in as a manager, whatever you do, even you feel you have an objectivity to it, you will always have a comment that, that's the manager's favorite employee, or this because the person is very close, they got a better rating. Whereas you would have really done your due diligence, you would have had a very clear understanding of what the performance was and why you're rewarding. But you very unintentionally, maybe you would have demonstrated something which would have been perceived as somebody being very close. So you have to be
right.
very, very conscious, because in an organization, it is how you conduct yourself that matters. So that really is important, because it creates a bit of unrest in the team. That will also have an impact on the team performance, because if there is too much of a noise, then that really disrupts the team spirit.
Definitely. How do you think organizations identify and nurture high performers uh, when you have labels like top talent or exceeds expectations or um, above expectations?
Um, in any system, we have outliers are going to be natural. It is on which side of the curve they fall, because we label so many things very easily, and I think HR is very good in labeling, because we come out with very creative stuff, and we immediately put an SOP, put a policy, and we're very good in that system. And eventually, we start bucketing many things and compartmentalize it and put a label and leave it there. But how many times have we gone back to reevaluate whether that has been really helping us in either getting people who fit in that, or are we eliminating people? Because that kind of puts in a pressure to the employee as well, because lot many times you can have a performer who is not loud enough, but your system is not capturing, because your system is capturing only the ones who make noise. So the system has to have a method where you have a very clear way of identifying, because it has to have very well defined parameters. So that helps in terms of having people who are also into the system. Even without labels, your system captures them. Because not everybody needs to be in that crowd making the noise. So you need to look at your silent performers also.
Right. So, if you had an opportunity to eliminate one outdated performance management process from the organizations that you're currently working or you've worked, what would that be and why?
Um, I think the bell curve is something that all of us don't like it, because we know how it really impacts where you really have good performers, but you have a percentage, you have a bell curve, you have to do a force fitting, and when all the managers sit for their consensus discussion, that's the most toughest time the managers have, because you really have to fight it out. And it is not the performance of the employee, but then it becomes the performance of the manager who can fight out that, right? So you take away the individual's performance away, then it becomes the ability of the manager to see who is getting that visibility. So I think that's not being very fair on the part of the organization to the employee who has really contributed over a period of a year and then waiting for the turn to come. And because you had a curve, you had a fitment, you had a limitation, he or she couldn't fit in there. That is not something that an employee would really be appreciating, and that's going to also impact an organization because you're going to lose out on your performing employee, a potential leader who will have a very silent walk away from the system. And at the end of the day, we can only have an exit conversation.
I cannot disagree with the point on bell curve because it's a force fitting methodology, and I've put in all the efforts throughout the year, and just because I do not fit into a particular percentage, I've been brought down to the next level, which not just impacts my thought process, but also it impacts to a level to for me to even think, should I go the extra mile the next time, right? So that question comes up, and it's always a challenge for the manager, for the HR, and others. That is one thing I would also remove from the organizations that I've been part of, if they had been using a bell curve. And the last point that I would want to ask you is, looking ahead 5 years from now, what will high performing organizations do differently to enable performance beyond strategy?
I think with so much of a disruption coming in, and with so much of a dynamically evolving landscape and an ecosystem that we are witnessing, looking at a 1 year tenuity of performance evaluation and giving feedback is going to be something that organizations cannot hold anymore, because your people will want instant gratification, instant recognition. So you will have to have a system which is going to capture that performance, that recognition, and also reward more instantly. So your waiting time, probably that'll add more work to the HR, because we might have to process these things, maybe even month on month, who knows? Because that's the kind of pace that we are looking at. Because we had a 1 year waiting period and people were okay to wait, but now it is not that case. So we will have to look at looking at most skill based, knowledge based, and instant recognition based pool that we are working with. So that will also create the way that we are going to reward a performance, recognize performance, and start working towards changing the entire system and create a totally new system which is going to be a lot more short tenured, short term, but still capturing people who are going to be potential high performers, your high performers, so that you're able to still deliver what the organization wants.
I would definitely agree to your point. Just to highlight, I'm not naming the organization, but this organization does a review on a monthly basis, and they provide a salary increment every 6 months, which means this 6 months, if you had achieved A rating, which is the highest rating, and if your percentage increase is about 5%, the next 6 months you still have the opportunity to do much better. And depending on that 6 months period, your salary increase would happen further. If there is a dip, then again your salary increase will reduce. So instead of waiting for 12-month period, this organization specifically has introduced a 6-month appraisal system, and they've been very successful in terms of not just retaining individuals, but also telling them that, hey, consistency would not just help you to get better increase, but you've already done well. Why do you want to go low? Right?
I think, yeah, that's a very, good aspect, because not all your goals follow the same periodicity. Because there can be a short-term goal and there can be a goal that runs beyond 1 year also. Because if you look at different levels, not everybody is going to run with, equal tenuity of goals. Because definitely the senior leadership team, for any change for them to see, can be even 2 years, because that's when you start realizing the rewards of your change management, of your initiatives. But for an intern, they are just going to be at a task level. They can realize it in a month. They can do the delivery. They can come at par. So we will have to put a system which is going to fit, these different employees. And I think no longer one size fits all, is going to be the mantra. It's going to be different size fitting different people.
Certainly, and one person can also opt for a different size basis on the climate, environment, and other factors.
Yeah, I think the
Well,
choice is very important, because I mean, what I'm also wanting to emphasize is, now we have created a system and we are fitting people to the system. I think the greatest evolution will be, you understand your people and you create a system that fits the dynamics of the people. I think that's when HR becomes more relevant. That's when the organization is also able to cater to different segments of its people.
certainly, Shanti, thank you for sharing your inputs. We are at the end of our session today. Would you want to share any other points that we had missed during our conversation?
I think thanks for this opportunity, because talking about an HR strategy or an HR function, and diving deeper into it and sharing my perspective, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Arun. And it was pretty detailed, and we could exchange our experiences, and you brought in a lot of insights, and that was interesting too. I think what I really want to emphasize is, whatever the initiatives or efforts and everything that we do, uh, for an HR, the H of the R should be louder. That human aspect of it should be very, very loud. And I'm sure when my teams hear that, they know that this is what we've been hearing day in and day out. Because in everything that you do to the organization, every initiative that you drive for your organization, you really have to understand to whom are you doing it, and who is going to be the person who's going to be the recipient. That's going to be the human. So whatever you do, you keep that aspect. I think that brings in a lot of success for us in terms of delivering, achieving what we really intend to. And that brings about a harmony for us, building the trust with the employees and delivering to the organization. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. If your organization succeeds, I think all of us will, get our raise and get our paychecks properly.
Absolutely, Shanti. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And we call this a thought leadership session. And for sure, you exceeded our expectations, being an expert and a thought leader in various areas of HR. And I think that the current topic or the topic we spoke today soundly resonated with a lot of things that are happening, not just in the market, but also in the workplaces that we try to make it better and better day by day. And we're really glad to have you today in our session. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you once again, and thanks for the opportunity. I hope I did justice for the time, and the questions that you had for me, and I was able to answer that.
Certainly, it was a pleasure having you with us, and I carry a lot of insights from the conversations that we have. Thank you very much once again. Have a lovely evening ahead. Thank you.
Same to you. Thank you. Bye.